here. Glad to see you in the stream already. We have Wendy Hickson here and Corey Dora. This live stream has some requests, and so we're going to be honoring the requests from patrons and, of course, answering other questions. But some of the theme is going to be dictated by what the patrons talked about in their questions. So we will be doing that. You can see, hopefully, right here, that is a vinegaroon. And I figured we would start the live stream by attempting to feed the vinegaroon, who's been really hungry lately and eating super well. So hopefully it would eat on camera. It was showing interest in a cricket earlier, and I'm going to move my hand to a better spot because I can see that the light is shading it. But yeah, it is a vinegaroon indeed. This is Mastigoproctus tohono, the species that can be found around Sonoyta, Arizona, and other places too, but that's where this one was from. The locality is Sonoyta, Arizona. I'm going to see if it goes for the cricket. It had a mealworm. Was it yesterday or the day before? I don't remember. For sure, I think it might have been yesterday. But, oh, yeah, it's showing some interest, but it's also showing a little bit of defensiveness. So we'll see. We shall see how it does. It's been good at tongue feeding most of the time. Let's see. I see Laura Taylor's here. HS is here. 503 Menagerie's here. Yotaro's here. How's your tailless whip scorpion, 503? Bluey, right? Is that the name? Or did I mess that up? Sean Meister's here. Item 13 is here. Theropod Hunter, Kevin Zay, welcome. Yotaro, you're just still hiding. Holy cow. It's been a long time. I might cheat a little bit and just put it right by the pedipalps and see what it does. I don't know if it's going to take it or not. I think it's thinking about it though. Oh, thank you, Laura Taylor. I am leaning my hand up against the side of the enclosure, which helps. I don't know. Being pretty deliberate about it. It was really after the mealworm yesterday. Been mostly using superworms, crickets, and mealworms. Well, mostly superworms and crickets, but I have done a mealworm or two. I don't know if it's going to end up eating this. Usually, by now, it's taken it. If not, I've got some hungry water beetles. Major WD, hello. Did your order come in? Your dry goods? So HS, there are some similarities with a vinegaroon and a tarantula, not quite the same in all the ways, but I would say they're quite similar to the caring for a fossorial tarantula in a lot of ways. There's still some differences. I haven't cared for a fossorial tarantula. I only have one species that's not fossorial, although they do burrow a bit when they're younger, especially. Anyway, one of the main differences is you need to take special care to provide a substrate for vinegaroons that will be resistant to collapse, because most fossorial tarantulas are good about webbing up the inside of their burrows, which helps to prevent, and can't completely eliminate, but helps to prevent burrow collapses. And vinegaroons don't do that. But other than that, you provide a nice deep substrate, and vinegaroons like it to be, partially moist, at least lower down. And they like to eat the same kinds of things that tarantulas eat, like crickets, superworms, roaches, that sort of thing. So in some ways, they're pretty similar. Oh, Charlie's here. Charlie Moorcroft, welcome. Good to see you here. So this tub is I'm giving up on the cricket, folks, because he's taken off. He's done. So I'm going to switch to another invert here on the screen. So give me a minute to do that. This enclosure is the Walmart mainstay enclosures that they're like a shoebox. They come partially pre-ventilated, and I drilled this one so it would be more ventilated for a vinegaroon. But Yeah, let me scoot back on it a little bit. You can see it. I think the Mainstay is the brand. I don't buy a lot of things at Walmart, to be honest, but I think the brand is Mainstay, and it's I think this is the larger shoebox size, but I could be wrong about that. Pretty cool enclosure. I'm afraid I wasn't quite used to how it works, so I kind of cracked one corner above it. But the clips on here are awesome. These come from Alex at Tarantula Haven. He 3D prints these. Sent me out a few to try, and I really like how they work to keep the lid on securely, so you can use it for things like vinegaroons and tarantulas. Pretty neat. So I have some more clips, and I'm actually going to try to get a few more of the enclosures so I can try those out. But I'm moving over to a different invertebrate now, because that one definitely doesn't want to eat. I'm going to look at some tailless whip scorpions because one of our patrons had some questions about tailless whip scorpions. So here's one of them right here. We're going to take a look. So the clips, Laura Taylor, and anybody else who's interested in the clips, check out Tarantula Haven on YouTube. And if you look for the cage clips, there's some videos, fairly recent videos on cage clips. There are links in the description. He has an Etsy shop where he sells them, and there are different models for different sizes of enclosure and different versions of the enclosure, so make sure you get the one you want. But yes, so let me pull up the that's not a very good view, is it? That's a little better right there. I'm going to take the tailless whip scorpion out in a minute here, but I want to pull up my Instagram playing music. Okay. I'm going to pull up Patreon. I didn't realize I had Instagram open. Okay. Ashley Nebel has questions. Heather Cellini has questions. And Vance just has a comment, not a question, but there we go. So we're going to talk about tailless whip scorpions first. This is from Heather Cellini, who says, "So glad you're on the mend, and thank you. I am feeling quite a bit better than I was last week. It's been a minute since you've chatted about tailless whip scorpions. Would love to hear anything you've picked up as far as husbandry lately." So let's talk about that. I'm going to get this one out. You'll notice that this is a polystyrene sheet. I have used both polystyrene sheets and cork bark flats as a background for them. They have a pretty limited subset of what they can use. This guy's climbing on my arm just now. It's funny because I had one for 7 years that was really used to being handled and was not particularly skittish, was pretty predictable. And then I'm afraid I lost her after 7 years. I mean, she passed away. She didn't disappear. She passed away, and I got a couple of others from roach crossing, and I got a male and a female, and the male here, this is the male, is quite a bit more skittish than Myrtle was, my female that I had for so long. And so I would say that I'm just not quite used to how skittish this one is compared to Myrtle. She was super calm. All right, so basically the question from Heather was, would love to hear anything you picked up as far as husbandry lately. So as you can see, this is very basic husbandry. If you use a polystyrene or a cork sheet, you have a fairly moist substrate. You can put springtails in it, and I do have springtails in there as well as Venizilo parvis isopods in there, which should be a good mix for these, or a good match for these, in that they're not particularly considered protein hungry, so-called protein hungry. I don't really like the term personally, but that's what I've got going on here, and it seems to be working fine. They've gone through quite a few molts. They were much smaller when I got them, and this male is probably able to reproduce. His pedipalps are going to probably, they'll proportionately grow larger, longer in proportion to his body size, but probably old enough to breed, because they will breed before they get their fully developed pedipalps in terms of length in proportion to their body. And the female is about a molt behind this one, has molted a few times. There's just one molt behind this one. Once she molts, I'm going to try to get them to reproduce. That would be fantastic. But here is my little tip about husbandry that I'm not doing yet, but I want to do. And I do have a 12 by 12 by 12 Exoterra with cork bark along 3 sides that I want to put them in once I get to that point. But I went to the um, Butterfly Biosphere in Lehi, Utah, which is about an hour-ish, maybe a little more than an hour away from me. And I went there in April, and they had a pair of Daman diadema. Well, I think they were Daman diadema. Like this one is Daman diadema, which are kind of hard to find. Daman medius is the one you find a lot more nowadays. These are captive bred, and they are Daman diadema. Anyway, this enclosure was probably, I'm just guessing on the size here, but probably about 36 by 36 by 36, or maybe even a little bit taller than that. And it had all sorts of things on the wall. Now, when I had first read about and done my research on tailless whip scorpions, it said kind of keep the walls minimalistic. Don't put too much on them because you don't want to interfere with their molting. But the enclosure was so large and there were so many spaces where they could molt because they need quite a bit of vertical space to be able to hang when they're molting, and quite a bit of horizontal space too. They need to spread out a little bit. So anyway, this had all kinds of ledges and different things, but also open spaces for them. And it was a planted, looked like a bioactive setup. It looked absolutely gorgeous. And there was a male and there was a female, and the female had juveniles all over her back. And I thought, oh, okay, this is what I want to aspire to. I want an enclosure like that. I want to set it up this way. It will have plenty of space for them, and plenty of ledges and things like that, because it looked fantastic. And they looked fantastic too. And they were active despite the fact that it was, it was daytime, it was fairly lit. They were doing their thing. So that was really cool. So I think that's what I'm going to aspire to. I'll also say that I'm not sure what they were doing for feeding, because it can be a challenge to feed tailless whip scorpions in large enclosures, because food density is hard to maintain when basically you want them to encounter their food often enough. In an enclosure that big, I'm not sure how they're doing it. So I would actually like to talk to the folks there and see what they're doing, because they're not the most excellent hunters. They're pretty good, but they have to everything has to be kind of the right place in the right time. And that's easier to replicate in a smaller enclosure. And so I'm not sure what to do. I feel like putting crickets in there, too many crickets would be dangerous, because especially if they molt, that would definitely be dangerous. But even if they don't molt, it could potentially be dangerous to put too many crickets in there. There's a kind of more gentle roach that you could put in there, like a climbing roach. That might work better. I can't do that in my house because my wife doesn't want me to, so that's a problem. So there you go. Those are a couple of things about husbandry for Heather that are not necessarily things I've adopted yet, but things that I'm looking at doing. So Major WD has a question. Do you keep any springtails with your desert tenebrionids? I don't put any in there on purpose, but I have seen them on occasion, because I do keep one corner pretty moist in the enclosure, and I've seen them in there, which is not too surprising. But I don't put any in there on purpose. They're Cecobria tenebricosa, I believe is the name. Formerly Sinella curviceta. I'm trying to get into the habit of calling them the newer name. So Theropod Hunter, there are tailor swift scorpions or tailless whip scorpions from more arid and more humid habitats. It seems like most of the time when they are from arid habitats, they tend to seek out more humid micro habitats. That is my understanding. In imaginary eye, they are related to scorpions. They are not scorpions, but they are arachnids like scorpions. They're chelicerates, and which is a larger group than arachnids. And then within that, they're arachnids. And then they're in their own group, they're the amblypygids, and that's pronounced many different ways. The amblypygids are the tailless whip scorpions, also known as whip spiders. Not true spiders, not true scorpions. No telson, no venom, but they do have chelicerae like spiders and scorpions. They do have pedipalps that are modified in these guys quite a bit for grasping their prey. They're raptorial pedipalps. And then you can see the chelicerae right between the pedipalps there a little bit. And you can see their antenniform legs, the really thin ones that are now folded. Those antenniform legs are legs that are adapted solely as sensory organs. They don't use them for locomotion at all. And Let's see. And I know I'm missing a lot of the chat. Um, Someone said something about memberships, and I missed part of the conversation, so I'm not sure what happened there. Um, oh, Domingo, sorry to hear you're facing some hard times. My week has been very busy, but I can't complain too much. Sorry, this guy's teleporting again. I'm just not used to this particular individual quite yet, but I'm getting there. You can see there it is, down on the ground there. Face hugger is a good nickname for them, kind of. Um, let's see. Do I have any soul fugids? I don't. I have only, they live around here, and I've had people encounter them and bring them to me, and I've kept them for short periods of time. But they're not something that I never was really able to get them to eat much. I think I had one of them eat once. So I have not really pursued the idea of keeping them. I know that some people have cracked the code on them and are doing well with them. I haven't really looked into it a whole lot. Okay, I'm going to cover the lid. I'm going to put the lid on this one. And I want to share with you, where did I put the lid? I was distracted when I put the lid down, I guess. Well, that's awesome. How did I even do that? I put the lid down somewhere, and now I don't know where I put it. It should be right around here. Is it in the back? No. I do have a backup lid if I need it for the moment, and then I can find the other one. But that's not cool. Okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm going to put this backup lid on. It's a screen lid, which it's not really appropriate for the humidity levels. And there I find the other lid. That was easy. So this lid does allow air exchange to occur, but at a far slower rate because there are some gaps. You can see there's one of the gaps here. There's another one here. There on some on the other side. So I get some ventilation, and it is sufficient since it's a very dry area here. I want to dry them out. There we go. And I have one more, the female, who is smaller, in this setup, which is very similar, but this one is in a plastic enclosure, which has been drilled for cross ventilation, and the top has been drilled as well. And I put the polystyrene on there. So the female's a little smaller. I'm going to spray the side over here. I think it's a little too dry in there, maybe. A lot of times they'll go down to the substrate when they're a little bit too dry. I'm going to feel the substrate, and it's not too dry. She's just hanging around down there for kicks, I guess. I'm going to put this lid back on. I made these containers a long time ago out of some plastic food storage containers, really long time ago, for my first group of tailless whip scorpions. Let's see if we can see Flat Stanley here. We're doing arachnid heavy content right now. We're going to talk about springtails too, though, because it was Ashley Niebel was asking about springtails, so we're going to get there. Oh, Hair Wade gifted a membership to Wendy. That's awesome. I'm still figuring out how that whole membership stuff works. Honestly, I'm not sure how it works yet. I got it set up, but I don't know how it works. So let's take a look here. Can everybody see that? You see him moving? He's fast. See, there's a molt right here. The most recent molt Flat Stanley produced. Fast little guy. Looking really nice. Just molted a few days ago. I love the pattern on these guys. It's beautiful, as well as their leg pattern. Oh, this is one I think we should be breeding in the hobby too eventually. They are fantastic. I love these little guys. So visible, except when he's molting. He's usually out and about. Pre-molt, I mean, pre-molt, he goes and hides, but I think it's molted 4, maybe 5 times in the time that I've been keeping it. Okay, we're going to take a look over here. I'm going to lower the thing down here. And Sean, thank you. Yes, we need to get some likes going. Definitely need to get some likes going. Okay, here are some Cecrobraea tenebricosa. There's a good number of them in here. They're not excessive in here, but the reason why I wanted to show some springtails is because Ashley Nebo had some questions about springtails. I don't know what species Ashley is working with springtail wise, because you know your mileage can vary with different species of springtails. But she says, in a couple of my bins, the springtails are out of control. They escape through the lid, and I find piles of the dead around the shelves they are on. They leave brown marks all over the walls on the bins. I used to shake extra off into a bin of moss for seeding new enclosures, but now that is busting at the seams. I've held off on extra feedings. Right now I've been trying to really dry out the bins without harming the isopods. Any other tips? Ooh, just for a second, I'm going to get this super chat from Dope Critters saying, "Hey Russ, been a while since I caught a live video. How often do vinegaroons molt? If they molt, um, they tend to molt in their dormant season. At least the species that the 2 species, I guess it is, maybe only 1 species that I've had. They tend to molt just once a year in their dormant period in the winter, and they don't always do it. There's some springtails. You can see more like what you would expect to see from springtails, right? I wonder if I feed them, I can get them to stay. Maybe. I don't know. We'll try it. They tend to like these fish food pellets if I can keep it from rolling too much. That's the trick, isn't it? We'll put one right here. See if we can get them to hang out on it. So thank you, Dope Critters, for the super chat. Really appreciate it. And now I'm going to try to address Ashley's question about the springtails. I have never had occasion where springtails have just completely overrun anything. I think part of that may be because I have some predatory mites, and these are not the ones that are dangerous for reptiles. These are the ones that prey upon things like springtails and other small invertebrates. I think you can see one of them right in there. Let's see, where are my tweezers, my forceps? Where did it go? I just saw it on the screen. Oh, there it is. Hopefully I'm seeing that right. Nope, I lost it. I don't see it anymore, but I saw what I believe to be a predatory mite. And the predatory mites will eat other mites, which is great. Things like grain mites and or abatid mites that you don't necessarily want in your enclosures. But they will, oh, I think I see, now I can't tell if that's an orobatid. No, that's an orobatid mite, not a soil mite. The predatory mite. The predatory mites, now all my springtails are gone. But you can see a Cubaris species Saba right there. Cubaris Saba, species Saba gold flake. I'm getting all my names messed up. Anyway, that caused all the springtails to hide because they don't like the bright light, I'm guessing. Anyway, oh, there's a super chat from Richard at the Tarantula Collective. The Tarantula Collective. Merry Christmas to you, Richard. That's awesome. Really appreciate it. Fantastic. I hope you have a most excellent Christmas. So I was talking about the springtails, wasn't I? Yeah. So the springtails. These springtails, I think it's because I have the predatory mites which keep their populations to a reasonable level. This enclosure I consider having a healthy population of springtails. There's plenty in here for such a small enclosure, and they do good work. There are a lot of them in here, but there aren't too many, and I think maybe it's because I have the predatory mites. It might be worth looking into getting some predatory mites and see if that helps in those bins specifically, because these are good numbers, but then we're not overdoing it. So Hey, yeah, that's right. Richard does have a tarantula Yule log video on his channel. So if you want a tarantula Christmas, that's the way to do it. You know where to go, everybody. So that may help. Another thing you can think about doing, and this would be an experiment, Ashley, but sometimes I'm wondering how a barrier like if you get some of the food grade silicone grease, which some people use to keep roaches in their enclosures, the climbing roaches, you could try doing a barrier strip of the food grade silicone because it apparently works better than Vaseline and is completely non-toxic, and it tends to withstand greater temperature ranges than things like Vaseline. You know, Vaseline gets a little warm and it doesn't work very well. So you could try putting a barrier of that or something like roach no crossing, you know, something along those lines around the enclosure to see if that keeps them from climbing out. It would just be an experiment. I haven't tried it, so I have to preface it with that. But it's just something, let's put it this way. When you said that, and I thought, if I had that problem of too many springtails getting out of the enclosures, what would I do? And that's what I would do, I think. So that would be my experiment. So let me know what you think about that. Let me know if you try to do it, especially because I think it would be fascinating for us all to know what the result was. And you can get that for fairly cheap. And it would be really interesting to know. Sorry, my thumb looks so gigantic, but wanted you to get a look at these. There are a lot of, this is Cubaris species Saba Gold Flake. There are a lot of them in here, but I scared them earlier. Here's some on this piece of cork bark, though, along with the springtails for comparison. I really like these. These were sent to me by Isotopia. I love the variability of their patterns. They're like a calico cubaris with a lot of variety. You see the one in the top right that almost looks like a Cubaris murina. It has a little orange, or well, colored uropods that are colored differently than its dark body. And then you have all these others with all these variations. So pretty cool. So Domingo, what are you doing on Christmas? I am staying here on the actual day of Christmas. My son and his wife are going to come up, and so all the kids will be here because my other kids are already here. And um, I think 3 of my 4 kids have already finished school for the semester, and one of them is going to finish in a few days. Anyway, my son and his wife are going to come up. We'll all be together on Christmas Day here, and then on, and we're going to do a lot of the traditional Christmas things, exchange gifts and all that stuff. Have a special Christmas program at church and things like that, and then we're going to do the Boxing Day, the day after Christmas. We're going to go down to my wife's parents' house. They live almost 2 hours away. So we're going to, and our tradition is we always have Christmas with them the day after and with other siblings that live around. My wife has 2 siblings that live in the state, and we're going to all get together and celebrate Christmas again the next day. So that'll be fun. And Celery Man, thank you. Glad it's been helpful to you. So Ramingo, are you talking about the amblypygids, Uricantha? Is that the one I'm thinking? I could be thinking wrong. Uricantha or Uricanthus bacillifera, and there are a couple other species. Let me see. Um, let's see. Oh, no, I was thinking of Euphranicus. So Uricanthus, I'm not remembering it right now. So sorry about that, Ramingo. The name's not ringing a bell. I was getting it confused with Uricanthus. They both start with an E. Um, oh, Yotaro, thank you for the super chat as well. We're getting some nice super chats today. I appreciate it, everybody. It's a nice Christmas present. Oh, 503 is saying, do you want to shout out Joe's new Velvet Ant book? I totally do. my cousin Joe Wilson is a velvet ant scientist. He is technically an evolutionary biologist, but he focuses specifically on wasps and bees with a special focus on solitary wasps and bees, including velvet ants. A lot of his research that he has done is on velvet ants. So just one second, I'm going to grab something. He is releasing a book, and it doesn't come out until when is it? February, but you can pre-order it, and it is a velvet ant field guide, and I'm super excited about it. And when I heard about it, I thought, oh, that would be so cool. I want to get that for Christmas. And I told my wife, oh, I want this. And she said, well, it doesn't come out till February, but I still want it. So I'm going to get it one way or the other. It's just I won't be able to get it for Christmas, but I can pre-order it because how fantastic is that? A velvet ant field guide written by my own cousin, who is just as much a fan of velvet ants as I am. Okay, we're going to play Name the Isopod. Who knows which one this is? Oh, I pushed the wrong button. Sorry, everybody. Okay, there we go. All right, we're looking at the idea. Oh, there's Alan. Alan's here, and Frank the Tank's here. Very cool. So thank you, Diotero, again for the super chat. Laura says, extra video idea, could you take screenshots of your enclosures with the extra bugs, good, bad, and ugly? Maybe point out the different bugs that inhabit our enclosures. Excellent idea. Excellent idea. I need to do that. Because in addition to springtails, we do get other bugs. And some of them are wonderful to have, and some of them are less wonderful to have. So that's an excellent idea. Let's do it. So my cousin's name is Joe Wilson, and you should check out my cousin on, I didn't even finish shouting him out. Sorry, I'm so distracted today. If you go to YouTube or Instagram, he's The Bees in Your Backyard, and there are underscores between all of the names, The Bees in Your Backyard. And if anyone wants to go find the link to his YouTube channel, one of the mods, and put it in the chat, that'd be fantastic. It's like bees underscore in underscore your underscore backyard. And I can't remember if there's a the on it right now or not. But anyway, he has a really fun YouTube channel and a really fun Instagram channel all about solitary wasps and bees mostly, and really cool. So you should definitely check it out. And you pre-order the book if you want it. I'm super excited about it. So yeah, he is my cousin, and we've some of the velvet ants that I've had have been from him. He'll finish a research project and a photo shoot or something, and say, hey Russ, I got some velvet ants. I'm done with the photo shoot. Do you want them? And I say, of course I do. And he's brought me some beetles and things too. So Joe Wilson is the name of the author. Joseph Wilson, he usually goes by. I always called him Joe, but I guess professionally usually goes by Joseph Wilson. But The Bees in Your Backyard. So the species here is actually Armadillidium vulgare. Someone guessed Punta Cana, but it's not actually Punta Cana, but I could totally see why you would say that because they look similar. So Virtual Vaporeon. Glad you like these. I really do too. So let's see. The Bees in Your Backyard. So, okay, Frank the Tank was able to find the YouTube link to The Bees in Your Backyard, and that'll help you get on it. You can find that. So thank you, 503, for the suggestion. That's awesome. So night gold is not night gold. This one is actually Santa Lucia. And 503 just said it right before I did. So there you go. You win, 503. So it is indeed vulgare, but it is the locality is Santa Lucia. And one thing I love about Santa Lucia, as I love about many other versions. Okay, I'm going to see what I can see. I'm going to get a close-up on some of these. There's some springtails, but what I wanted to show you, get a close-up on some of these in the variety here. Those look a lot like, these two here look a lot like Orange Vigor, but they're not. And then there's one here too. It's a polymorphic locality. Basically, the locality produces a lot of different forms, and we're not entirely sure why, because the form produces them. I mean, the locality produces all these different forms, and genetically, apparently, there's something going on that allows that to happen. There's a few more there. You see a lot of different colors. Some of them look like magic potions. They're not magic potions. Some of them look like it though. Some of them are extremely high yellow, like that individual you can see now. They're just fantastic, and they vary quite a bit. So there you go. All right. So now that we've seen the Santa Lucia, which is seriously probably one of my favorites because they're so variable naturally. I really love things like that. I love the California mix Porcelio levis, which is a similar idea, but in Porcelio levis form, where it's a polymorphic locality. Punta Cana is another one that's similar. There's so many different versions of isopods like that that produce a lot of different colors and patterns in one locality without a lot of genetic variability, which is fun. Okay. Um, I just feel like doing this one right now, and I don't want you to stare at a blank background. I need to just put like a poster here with my logos or something so you can at least look at an isopod photo when you're not looking at anything else. I just want to show you some zingers because, whoa, sorry guys, that's not what I meant to do. Because zingers are gorgeous. Okay, so virtual Vaporeon. Oh yeah, the isopods definitely love mealworm sheds. That's a good use for them for sure. And Corydora, I've had my peep rhinoceros for 2 months now, no babies. How much longer should I need to wait? Not long. You honestly, uh, I'm surprised you don't have any babies now. Occasionally, you'll see this, and you'll need if their population is too small in a big space. Sometimes that'll slow them down a little bit, and you can concentrate them. If you just add some more adults, you might get them breeding really fast. That's helped some people before who have asked me about that. You could also try moving them into a smaller space temporarily. And yeah, giving them some more leaves will not hurt. So Marimba girl, how often do keepers breed new colored genetic morphs in isopods? I can't give you a real statistic on how often it happens, but it's happening more and more often as isopods are becoming more common and more species are entering in, and the awareness of the fact that isopods can be different morphs, people, they find them and they start working on it. So virtual Vaporeon, how much protein and calcium are you feeding? If you're asking me, the Supreme Isopod chow that I use as one of the staple diet items contains some supplementary calcium. I will grind eggshells and throw it in, and I have cuttlebone and things like that. But I don't tend to add those other supplementary forms of calcium because I feel like leaf litter and things like Supreme Isopod chow, you're getting some calcium, and I think calcium is often overblown. Isopods will eat it; they'll often eat it voraciously. But the studies that people have done, at least I don't know if you want to call them studies, but Warren McMonagle is very knowledgeable about isopods. He basically started the isopod hobby in the world, and he has over years done tests when he gives isopods uh, calcium, and when he gives them, he makes sure that their food contains calcium. Like leaf litter has calcium in it. You mix a lot of leaves, you're going to get some calcium in there. Things like fish food pellets, calcium. Dog food, cat food, they have calcium in them. So things that you give the isopods are going to have some calcium in them. You don't necessarily need to go overboard in giving them a lot of calcium. And he and others who have been in the hobby for longer than most, Kyle Candillian's another one. He's saying he has multiple generations of rubber duckies that are doing well, eating mostly things like roach poop and not supplemental calcium. Uh, things like cuttlebone or limestone chunks or eggshell. They get calcium from their food. Don't get me wrong. They get calcium from their food because it's in things like fish food and leaf litter. But he's not going overboard dumping a whole bunch of other calcium sources in there, and they still do great. So that's an interesting thing. I add calcium, but I don't add it very frequently. Protein I add a lot because I give them things like fish food, pellets, which have a lot of protein. The Supreme Isopod chow has a decent amount of protein in it. It's really good food for that. So There you go. Hopefully that helps. Should we bring some crumbles out and see how those are doing? Let's see. I'm going to bring the orange cream, which are kind of crumbles. They're just the cream, the crumbles with orange, meaning creating a new morph. So let's take a look at those. These are seriously, if I had to pick one, I could only keep one Porcellanitis prunosus. It would be this one. I hope I don't ever have to be reduced to only keeping one. But if I ever am, I hope it's this one. Zoom out a little bit and see what we can see. Now these are the orange crumbles. I mean orange cream, sorry, orange cream. This is stock from, that came to me through Art of Darts, artofdarts.co. And they've been doing really well. I've shipped a few of them out and they're everywhere. I actually need to upgrade the bin. This bin is too small now for this group because they're doing really well. That this piece of bark was pushed right up against the soil, so there aren't quite as many here, but you can see all different sizes. They're absolutely gorgeous. These are not the freckled gingers. I have the freckled gingers too, which I named because I used Oreo crumbles and powder oranges to create them. They're not descended from this specific stock. Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, virtual Vaporeon. I love that they do have so much, they have a great feeding response, which I adore. I think uh, one of my favorite things about a specific type of isopod would be the feeding response. If you can see a robust feeding response, that's a winner in my book. So totally there with you. Pumpkin spice Oreos, that's an awesome name for them too. I love that. So Sean Cooper, considering getting your first colony but very nervous about overbreeding, would not know what to do with them. Perhaps a large enclosure is the way to go for me. Well, just don't get dairy cows. maybe get something that breeds a little more slowly, like some of the armadillidium. That would help, because some of the armadillidium are just quite a bit slower. One I really like for that is Armadillidium gestroy. They will breed a lot more slowly. Once they do breed, they produce a lot of young, and the mortality is pretty low if they're kept well. So you might end up with a ton of them eventually, but it would take a while. And that is true, Sean. 503 is mentioning it. You might be able to find reptile keepers who need them. Yeah, I really like dairy cows, but they're one of those that can really kind of eat like crazy and breed like crazy and kind of overcrowd themselves. I feel like prenosis is a little harder to overcrowd them because they can handle huge densities and not have problems. Oh, I think that one smells the food. You think that one's going to go for the food? I hope so. I love watching the meat. So Laura Taylor, we need a video on all the crumble cream and all the other names and differences. Please help. I did actually do a video on Porcellanides prenosis and the different varieties, and it wasn't that long ago. So if one of the mods would like to go find that and throw it in the chat, that would be awesome. I don't have all the different morphs myself yet. Like I don't have the crystals. I don't have the pinks. Might be a couple more I don't have. Um, and that's true 503. If you don't mind it being used as feeders. Oh, did I scare it? I scared it away. I was hoping to get some closer up. The dairy cows can be used as feeders, and a lot of other isopods can. So that's one way to do it. Just keep something that'll eat them. So virtual Vaporeon. I know you mostly deal with single species culturing, but do you have any thoughts on cohabitation of species in terrariums? 10-gallon with locally collected species and powdered oranges. My thought is that the more varied a habitat you can give. So if you have a habitat in a large vivarium, and I'm not sure if a 10-gallon is large enough, but say you have a large enough vivarium, you can provide separate habitats, separate microhabitats within it. You have a better chance of succeeding than if you have all one habitat. Because if you do have all one habitat, the competitive exclusion principle is going to kick in, and you're going to have a harder time eventually. And it might be a year, it might be 2 years, but eventually one of those isopods is going to win out over the others. It's going to essentially push those others out. Um, and so they don't have a place to survive. Not push them physically out of the enclosure, but it's going to prevent them from thriving, and it's going to populate, and it's going to prevent the other ones from populating. It's going to win out. That tends to happen. But the larger the enclosure you have, and the more varied microhabitats you have, the better chance you have of success. So that's it in a nutshell. A lot of people have said to me, I have this enclosure and I have 6 different species of isopods in it, and they're doing great. And I say, okay, how long have you had them? And they say, 6 months. Okay, that's long enough to see some breeding in the isopods. It's not long enough to see if they're going to outcompete. I'm not saying it's impossible. I've talked to people who have had more than one species of isopods together, and some combinations seem to work better than others. For example, powders and dairy cows seem to work all right because they're both so prolific. As long as they get enough food, they don't seem to outcompete each other. So that, for what it's worth, I hope that helps. Um, so I have heard there are pink pruinosis. I have never seen them myself. I would love to get some. There's also a type called, now my mind's going blank. So there are orange cream, like these. They're the freckled gingers, but there's another one that has a different patterning altogether, and I can't remember what it's called now. It's more, instead of having kind of like patches of color, it's more defined markings of color. So Smugbug has them, and I want to get some. So on screen, these are Porcellionidase pruinosis orange cream. And I believe this stock comes from the stock that Kyle Candilian isolated by crossing Oreo crumbles with powder oranges. If it wasn't, it was named after that strain. And virtual Vaporeon, that's a good way to put it. Powder and dairy cows in the same enclosure is unstoppable force versus a movable object. So Russ, are you going to be in on 12 SDOC in a few? Not sure if I'm going to be able to do that tonight with what I've got going on, but I did pop in last week for a little while, which was awesome. I will see whether or not I'm able to do that. I can't make any promises, but it would be cool if I could pop in for a little while. So you're witnessing their feeding response. They're under a bright LED light, and of course there's not very many of them yet there. Most of them are hiding still, but they found the food. A couple of them have found the food, and they're doing their thing, just munching away. And yeah, the seashell, I love the seashells. I haven't noticed any particular wear on them, and it does look like this one's a little bit chewed on, but I think it just came that way. This type of shell, unlike Cuttlebone, they don't seem to nibble on it, and I'll keep them in there for years, and they seem to work really well as food dishes. Keep the food from getting too wet, keep it from getting all mixed up with the substrate. It doesn't matter so much when you have a dog food kibble like I just put in there, but if it's powdered food like the Supreme Isopod chow that I use a lot, then that is, it seems to work really well. So, oh, and you're welcome. I love donating to the 12 SDOC. I think it's great. Getting whatever I can do to help support 12 SDOC is awesome. I love to do it. So Lucas has P. pruinosis and P. laevis with red runners now for 2 years, a lot of them. So there's another example of P. laevis and P. pruinosis doing well together. Of course, dairy cows have recently been proven not to be P. laevis, but they're very similar, and I'm confident that P. laevis would be a similar idea. So item 13, yeah, try the shells out. The scallop shells are what you want. because they are flatter and they tend to have those ridges. You can see the ridges in it. If you get shells that are a little bit deeper and don't have the ridges, and there are plenty of clam shells and other, the bivalve mollusks that have that are deeper without the ridges, isopods can get trapped in them. But I feel like the scallop shells with those ridges are better. And if you have one that's really smooth, you can just take a little bit of sandpaper to it and take a couple of scratches across it, and then the isopods are going to be able to get out. Um, and theropod hunter, yeah, with dairy cows, I have dropped in chicken bones from dinner, like drumstick bones from dinner, and watched the dairy cows just totally clean them off within hours, and then they will eat the bones slowly too, because they're softened from being cooked and everything, and they will eat the ends off of them, and then they will dig inside them and just nibble off bits and stuff. I don't know if they've ever actually eaten one all the way gone. I wouldn't put it past them. So yeah, virtual Vaporeon. Dairy cows were long thought to be Laevis by the hobby in general. And then when people did crossbreeding experiments years ago, including myself, I did some, with things like the orange Laevis, and it wasn't working. We started to suspect, oh, it's not the same species. And then recently, an American isopodologist, uh, Nathan Jones, put that's his handle on Instagram, is American isopodologist, did some breeding experiments with Porcellio, with dairy cows and with milkbacks together, and they can interbreed just fine. They produced F1s, visual wild types that were double hets, and then produced others in the next generation. But did some micro photography of their genitalia and discovered that their genitalia is quite distinct from Porcellio laevis. So even though they look very, very similar on a superficial level, they're not the same species. So anybody have an isopod request? I'm going to show you something. I have an idea, but after that, I'll honor a request for a couple minutes if it's something that I can easily do. I'm going to show you my experiment that I did a while ago, talking about isopod competition. Microvarium.com sent me an enclosure, and I put various isopods in it, including one very small zebra, one very tiny zebra. I just put one of each species in it. And I tried to make sure they were either very, very small, that they're only male. It was only males that I put in there, or very, very small individuals. And that zebra was very capable of reproduction, even though it was minuscule. Now, most isopods can reproduce at an age. They can mate at an age and size much smaller than their adult maximum size. And that's, I knew that. That being the case, I still had issues with it. I later put a few more milkbacks in, and some other ones. There's an orange laevis. There's some milkbacks which are also not laevis. I put a few more of those in, and so on. But basically, there are not very many different species in here anymore. There are some. They're mostly milkbacks. There's a nosotum, Armadillidium nosotum. There aren't nearly as many species as I originally put in here, and mostly they are the milkbacks and the zebras. And I think most of the zebras, as you can see, there are a couple of zebras in here, but just like two. There used to be a load of zebras, and I took a number of them out of here. So this is showing that over time we're getting laevis, well, not laevis, Porcellio AFF dot laevis, meaning it has an affinity with laevis. It looks similar to laevis. It's not laevis anymore. So the scientific way to refer to Porcellio, to refer to dairy cows and milkbacks right now, is Porcellio AFF period laevis, or Porcellio X laevis, like EX laevis, not laevis anymore. I believe those are the two ways you can do it. Somebody just asked about Hoffmannsegei. I will show you my Hoffmannsegei. Interesting thing about Hoffmannsegei, I'm glad that bin was empty that I just accidentally kicked. Something I want to tell you about Hoffmannsegei is that this is Porcellio Hoffmannsegei black, which was thought for quite a while to be quite distinct from Porcellio hoffmannsegii, the nominate form. Apparently, American isopodologist again, doing some work there, um, and he says that these are indeed Porcellio hoffmannsegii. They're just a different locality, which is interesting. So David Jack, hey there, Russ. Enjoyed seeing you occasionally on Clint's channel. I enjoy being there every time. Super fun. Any good recommendations for IDing wild species I found in my area? I'm in the South Carolina low country. Yeah, I have some suggestions for you. Bugguide.net, if you can get some really nice pictures, especially in situ pictures, in other words, pictures in the wild habitat, nice up close photos of them with good lighting, good focus, all that stuff. You can post them. You just get an account on bugguide.net, post them there, and there are some folks on there who are really good at identifying isopods. That's probably my best recommendation. You can also try the Seek app, which uses AI to try to figure it out, and it can often do fairly well. It's not as good as uh, you know, people actually doing it on Bug Guide, but it's fairly decent. So yeah, I would say go for it with bugguide.net. That would be my first recommendation. I'm going to try giving these guys a little bit of bee pollen and see what they think. I fed them. They usually like bee pollen, but I fed them a whole bunch of dog food recently, and they didn't even finish it all. But I have noticed that a lot of times they'll eat one food for a while, and you think they're done because they stop eating it. But then you give them a different food and they'll go after it, because probably kind of like some other critters like roaches, that they can sense when there are nutrients in something that they need, and when they don't need other nutrients, they'll stop with one food and still go after another. So hopefully that helps David Jack about the bugguide.net. Let's see, Sam says, not nice potted question. Have you ever thought about working with some of the more exotic opiliones? They are so alien looking. Absolutely. The only one I have is the Libetioides Sayi, I think it is what it is now. They changed the name. It used to be Venoni Sayi, and now it's Libetioides Sayi. That's the only one I have, the only one I worked with. But I'm fascinated by the idea of working with some others. So Marimba Girl, here's some good questions. Are localities different than what you would call a morph? What happens when you mix different localities? Is there a dominant form? Okay, so 3 questions. Let's unpack that. Are localities different from what you call a morph? The difference is that localities mean that you collect individuals from a certain area, and in that certain area, well, locality just by itself just means that they are collected in a certain area, period. That's it. However, there are certain localities that have distinctive traits, like Armadillidium vulgare Santa Lucia. Individuals collected in that area often have that polymorphic trait where you get lots of different colors and so on. The Porcelliolavis California mix is another example where in a certain area in California, when you collect them there, they have that trait that they produce lots of different colors. There are different localities of Porcellio ornatus, for example, that look very different from one another. So locality means it comes from a specific place, and that may or may not be associated with very distinctive traits. A morph is a form that has been bred in captivity based on a mutation or a set of mutations. So powder orange, for example, is a morph of Porcellonides pruinosus. Some people found some wild, not some wild, they found some orange individuals, bred those orange individuals together, and that is a single gene mutation and a single gene trait. So it's easy to know that it is recessive to the wild types, and if you cross orange with wild types, you'll get hets. If you cross orange with orange, you'll get more orange. That is a morph, and then you can combine that trait with other genetic traits like crumbles. So you get the Oreo crumble trait, which causes the pied look. You cross that with orange, the first generation, they'll all look like wild types, but they'll have hets. There'll be double hets, and so you cross those double hets with one another, and some of the offspring will be orange and pied, and so that would be another morph if you isolate that. So morph refers to specific genes that are cultivated and combined with each other in some cases. And then your other question was, Is there a dominant form? So the traits genetically vary quite a bit. Many of the traits, but not all, many of the traits found in captive isopods are just single gene recessive traits. There are some that are dominant or possibly other things going on too. But in general, they're single gene recessive traits. So hopefully that helps. Let's see. So David Jack, okay, glad that will help. So item 13, I have to heat treat leaves that I ship across state lines, yes. Do I do anything to prep leaves from your colonies? So I have been working on some fermentation with leaves. I was talking to Invert Squad, Tennyson, and he has been working with some fermentation of leaves, and I think that it sounds like an excellent idea. I ferment, I make my own sauerkraut, which I know some people hate sauerkraut, but home fermented sauerkraut is much better than stuff you get in a store. And anyway, the fermentation is a lactic acid form of fermentation by bacterial action. It's not the same as the fermentation that yeasts produce to create alcohol. And so that is the kind of fermentation I've been experimenting with leaves to see if I can make them a lot more nutritious for isopods. Kind of like flake soil. Flake soil is a fermented wood product, and fermented leaves is something I'm working on. So I'm still in the early stages of experimentation, but I'll let you know how that goes. And thank you, Sam. And I am hoping to get a couple more harvestman species. So they're just not a whole lot out there right now, but I will hope to find that out. So great questions, Marimba Girl. Great questions to ask, and I'm glad that you asked them. My time is about up, so I need to log out. But thank you, everyone. Thank you for the super chats. To all of you who dropped those super chats in there, and the people who did that were Dope Critters, Tarantula Collective, and Yotaro 925, as well as Sam, who just added one. Thank you so much, Sam, for adding that super chat. I'm glad you enjoy the guides and appreciate it very much. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. And I've got some fun videos coming your way pretty soon, so keep an eye out for those. And take care, everyone. And if I don't interact with you between now and then, happiest of holidays, whatever holidays you choose to celebrate, if you choose to celebrate any, uh, and have a good one.